All right, hello. This is a quick guide on how to make your own AI headshots. It's going to be a full workflow on turning regular photos of yourself into super realistic, pro looking AI headshots. You're going to be able to use this for your LinkedIn headshots, portfolios, websites, pitch decks, anything that involves your face. Actor headshots, this is super powerful for that as well. This guide's going to be focused on text to image generations, but you can definitely take this further and add another step where it's image to video using tools like Kling, Dramina, Headdrop. There's a bunch of tools that help with that where you can actually make a talking avatar of yourself. I'm not going to cover that. I'm going to cover that in a separate guide. This is just going to be focused on generating images. So here's a before and after. So here are real headshots of myself. I was a professional photographer, and this is what I actually look like. And here's the AI headshot. So I used some of these images to train a model that then produced this AI headshot. And I mean, if you ask me, this is extremely high quality, super impressive. I'll show you some more examples. So, whoops. So here's some other examples. This is the same headshot. I just swapped out the background. Here's a photo of my friend using the same process, right? And then I had some fun, and this is me on a horse. This is her on a horse, and then this is her on a horse as a man. All right, so you can do more than just create headshots, but it's crazy how good these tools are getting. All right, so I'm going to walk through step-by-step workflow. I'm going to be walking through something called a Flux LoRa. That's going to be the bulk of how we spend our time. It's going to be the image generator for us. Enhancor.ai is going to be a tool that we use to enhance the portrait to make it look more realistic. And then we have two optional steps. We have Photoshop for cleaning up anything that's weird with your generation. I had multiple buttons. Yeah, if you look at this headshot here, scroll up. It's not letting me zoom in now. Okay, there we go. You can see that there's multiple buttons here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a bit weird. So I cleaned that up in Photoshop. And then another step is to go into Midjourney and actually swap out the background. So I can take this exact headshot like I did here and give it a completely different background like this one here. All right, so those are two optional steps. All right, so first thing I want to cover is that there's many different AI tools like Midjourney and ChatGPT and Leonardo and Flux, and there's a ton of different options. They're all very powerful and getting better and better. And most of them claim that they can generate consistent characters using a character reference. So that means during prompting, you'll upload a picture of the character you're looking to reference in your image generation. But a big limitation of these tools at the moment is that they're only accurate at generating consistent characters if the characters were created within the tools themselves. So, for example, Midjourney can character reference a character that was made within Midjourney. So if you generated a person from scratch within the tool, you can then character reference that creation, but you cannot character reference a real person or an image that was created outside of Midjourney. So here's an example. So I tried to generate images of myself using this headshot. So this is my headshot, right? And this is what it gave me. So that's not me. If we go back, you can see that it gave me a whole slew of different kind of like character reference adjacent image generations. This one was the closest, but none of these are really usable, right? And now I'm like 7 foot tall in this picture, so it's not great yet. It's not there yet. And this is using their latest V7 release, which is called Omni Reference, which is designed to help with this exact thing. It's just not there yet, right? And same thing with ChatGPT. Same situation with these other tools, right? Okay, so that creates a problem, but there is a solution. And that solution is a more advanced method of using character references to generating images of yourself, real people, and that's called using using a LoRa. So a LoRa is a low rank adaptation. That's what it stands for. It's a technique for efficiently fine-tuning large pre-trained AI models. So essentially what that means is you upload a lot of pictures of yourself or the person you're looking to generate AI images around, and it will train the model, and then you use that model to then generate the images. Okay, so it's a bit longer of a process. It's not very expensive to do. It costs about $2 to train a LoRa. And then there's the problem is that there's only some tools that get access to this kind of method. The one that I like to use is called Flux, which is available through a platform called FAL.ai. That's FAL.ai. So this is it here, FAL.ai. And I will walk through what that looks like right now. Okay, so within FAL, you'll come here, and it's not the most intuitive platform to use, looks like it's made for developers, and I think that's because it is. If you go to Explore and you come down here to Model, you can search for LoRa, and you'll see a few different options. We're making headshots, right? So I'm going to go to the Flux LoRa Portrait Trainer, come in here. Okay, so once we're here, you'll see that there's an input for uploading images. You can upload them individually or a zip file. You can upload a range from 5 to 50. You can go more beyond 50, but I wouldn't recommend that. And this image that I generated here was closer to 50. This image here was just 6 images. All right, so you can get pretty good results by just uploading a few images. But I will say that the more that you upload, the more it's going to have to reference. So if you have a pose that you're looking to generate, it's helpful to upload an image that contains that pose, or just the more variance in your body and how it looks from different angles is going to be helpful for generating more accurate images. So err on the side of uploading too many, or closer to 50 than closer to 5. All right, but if you only have 5 images, go for that. Here's what my zip file looked like. All right, so these are professional headshots, and it's me, my headshot. I worked as an actor, so these are actor headshots. I was also a professional headshot photographer for a couple years, and so this is what I uploaded as a zip file. All right, so you take the zip file and you drop it right here, and then you have some settings that you have to go through and select. All right, so the first one is a trigger phrase. What is this? So this is the phrase that you're going to be using to essentially trigger the LoRa to work as a character reference. So what I put in here was Brian Headshot. And once we start generating images and giving it a prompt, you have to use this exact phrase in the prompt. All right, so just choose something that you're not going to use. Like don't put in man, because you might use man as a normal prompt, or young man or something like that. Just Brian Headshot is a phrase that I'm only going to use if I'm trying to access this LoRa. All right, so we have some additional settings here, and they are not very intuitive. They are very confusing. They don't have clear definitions on what they actually affect. But here's how you can think about them. They essentially determine how strictly the LoRa is going to train based on the images that you're uploading to it. So, all right, if we go into my notes, I have some definitions and a bit more detail on what these do and what you should input. So the rule of thumb for steps is you want 100 steps per image. So if you upload 10 images, you want to set to 1,000. Lower steps, that means it's going to be training faster because it's being processed less, but it's going to be lower quality, and that model is going to learn fewer patterns, so it could result in blurry faces, less consistent likeness, artifacting, issues like that. And then higher steps means the training is going to be slower but higher quality. So more detail, facial accuracy, it's just going to be more accurate overall. But the issue is that if you train it with too many steps, this could cause something called overfitting, where the model is so strict that it's only able to recreate the images that you uploaded, right? So it's such a strict model that it's not going to vary much at all from these images that I uploaded, right? So it's going to have trouble producing poses that are outside of the poses in these images and clothing and all that. So you don't want it to be too strict. The range, it depends on the amount of steps, but you really don't want to go over 5,000, because that's when you start to see overfitting. So play in that range and use this 100 steps per image and by 100 steps per image, I mean, how many images are you uploading? Are you only uploading 6? Okay, then you only need 600 steps. If you're uploading 50, then you need 5,000 steps, okay? All right, so next setting is called learning rate, and I tend to leave this at the default at 0.0002. The goal of this setting is similar to steps, where it's trying to determine how strictly the LoRa is going to adhere to your images. So you can fiddle with lowering the learning rate, increasing it. It is not very intuitive at all. It's very confusing. They don't do a great job of explaining exactly what the results will produce based on the adjustments you make to the setting. I have some outlines here, but really I would leave it at the default, or I would upload your images into ChatGPT and have it help you decide what settings to choose, right? So that's a hot tip here, is use ChatGPT, upload your images, tell it what you're exactly trying to produce, and it will give you a pretty close recommendation on what you should be generating. And if you have images or issues with images when you actually go to prompt and generate them, and there's just inaccuracies, you might want to come back to retrain your LoRa and fiddle with these settings. Two more settings. There's one called multi-resolution training, and this will allow you to generate images in different aspect ratios. So it's going to determine how closely it should train the model based on the aspect ratios, right? The shapes and sizes of your images. So I would leave that on so it can produce any type of aspect ratio. And then for subject crop, I would leave this on because this is going to determine whether or not it's going to frame you as the main subject. So we want this on, right? And these are two toggles that are down here. And that's it in terms of adjusting settings. We're going to leave everything else at the default, right? So once we're here and we have our zip file uploaded, we're going to click start. We're going to see it start to load. It takes about 10 minutes or so. Once it's done, you're not going to see a notification, but you're going to see it says completed here. And then you can click run inference. And this is going to take you to the next step, which is generating your image. Okay, so you can see that it's taken us to Flux LoRa, text to image, and there's a few defaults here that are in place. Right, so we have our prompt. This is our trigger phrase that we wrote before. I'm going to use the exact prompt that I used to generate the images that I showed you in the examples. So the prompt was realistic Photoshop shot on DSLR of a young man outside standing by a tree, golden hour lighting. It's important to use phrases like realistic. DSLR is helpful because if you're going for a professional headshot, that's going to be shot on a professional camera like a DSLR. It's pretty helpful to include the lighting here as well. And you can definitely go much further with this prompt. If you want to be very specific around what you're trying to generate, definitely go deeper. And here's our path to our LoRa that we generated. So if you want to save this for later, just put this in your notes. But you can always go back to the screen that we were on before, the portrait trainer, and you'll see that it's stored here. So you can also access it this way. All right, so I go back to this. Okay, and the next setting is scale. This is going to determine how much it's going to reference the LoRa that we generated, right? So it's assigning a weight to it. I like to keep this around 1 or 1.2. If I generate some images and I see that they're a bit funky, they're not really looking like myself, this is the first thing I do. I'll come back to here and I'll play around with this and I'll scale it up. You could run into issues with overfitting like we talked about when we were training the LoRa. If you scale this up too high, but definitely play around, and I would recommend staying in the 1 to 1.2 range. More settings, I tend to leave this as default. You can definitely play around with these if you would like. Again, it's not very intuitive. And you can ask ChatGPT to help you as well. That's what I would recommend, but I tend to leave this at the default. The one thing I do change is the number of images, so I will scale this up to 4. This just means if I generate an image, it's going to generate 4 of them rather than 1. And you're going to notice that there's going to be some clunkers in what we generate, so it's nice to have more options to have just a better hit rate for the prompts that we're writing. So let me write in the prompt and run it, and let's see what's generated. Okay, so here's what it's generated, right? So these look pretty good. They definitely look like me. You can see that these are using the exact same shirt that I was wearing in some of the reference photos that I uploaded. This one looks pretty good as well. So let's say I like this photo, but it looks a little AI generated, right? So this is going to happen. My skin looks overly pure and there's no flaws, and my hair looks kind of animated, right? So there's definitely issues with this. But this is good enough for sure, because the next step is going to fix it up and make it look more realistic, right? So the next step here, once we have our base images that we generate with Flux, is to come into Enhancor.ai. And this is going to enhance our images to make it look more like a real person. So this is what the model looks like. I believe it's about $10 per month. All right, so you drop in your photo here, and then I tend to leave this at the default. If I do make adjustments, it's very slight. This is going to determine how realistic your skin's going to look, how much texture to add in. You can look at best practices for a guide on what you should set. I typically leave it at the default. And then there's some settings over here that are going to keep certain areas unchanged. And I like to flick on the left brow, right brow, and nose as well, because I notice if I leave this off, it tends to distort some of my features, and it starts to not look like myself as much. So I like to flick on nose, left brow, and right brow, and then we'll enhance and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, and now it's done, and you can see that there's a before and after here that you can toggle with the slider, and it's definitely going in the right direction, right? It's not completely there, but look at my hair. My hair looks so much more realistic. And my skin has more texture in it. This is still looking a bit AI, so what I would do is go back and play with some of these settings here, click enhance, and have another go at it. But this is definitely in the right direction. Okay, once we have this, we'll download it, and this works as our final headshot. But if you want to go further, or if there's issues with the image still, like in the example images that I generated, there were some issues where the buttons were looking a bit crazy. There's some stuff that was unrealistic that I want to clean up and get rid of. You can then bring this into Photoshop. And that's the third step here. So going back to the guide, fourth step. The fourth step is to clean up in Photoshop. This is optional. It's only if you have to. So here's the before and after where the buttons were removed, right? So this is pretty easy to do. You just go into Photoshop and use what's called a generative fill. So I take my marquee tool and I'll select everything that I want to remove, and I will either type in remove or just leave the prompt blank. All right, so now it's removed, and then you would just do that for everything that you want to remove from it. If there's any issues with your hair or any like loose ends that look like they need to be removed, you can go ahead and do that as well. All right, so this is what it looks like after making some adjustments with Photoshop. And then the last optional step is going into Midjourney and swapping out the background, right? So there's a new Midjourney tool called Edit that I'm really liking. It's super powerful. It looks like this, right? So you'll drop in your image and then you start to erase everything that you want to swap out with a new generation, right? You can also go to Smart Select and click around and it'll start selecting your background. And once you're here, you can put in a prompt like let's find a good example. Right, so something like this, where the prompt was professional actor headshot on a farm during golden hour, shot on DSLR at 85 millimeters. That's the focal length, shallow depth of field. All right, and then if this is blank, it will add parameters based on the settings that you input here, right? So I like to keep it at version 7 standard. I kill the stylization and weirdness because I don't want it to be overly stylized, overly weird. I want it to look very realistic. And then I keep the variety around 35 because it's going to generate 4 different options. So it's nice to see a variety of different options. So these are the settings that I use. You can play with this. And this is an example. I don't think this looks the best. If I cropped in, it might be usable, but some of this looks overly AI. And it's a newer tool, so there's definitely some issues with it, but I would continue to play around with it and see what you can generate. And this is what I used to generate this image here, which I thought was definitely usable, especially if I crop in, right? Looks pretty good. One other hack here is if you have trouble, so I was playing around with making some AI backgrounds, and some of these look absolutely terrible, right? Like just bad, like really, really bad. Pretty funny though. A trick that I learned is that if you take your headshot and rather than have it cleanly select your background like this, if you overlap your selection over your like face and body a little bit, it's going to do a bit of a better job of blending yourself into the background, right? So play around with both options of cleanly selecting yourself using the Smart Select, and also play around with something like this if it's not working for you, because you can see that these generations are looking pretty good, and this is using this kind of selection style versus some of these look pretty unrealistic, right? And I was doing more of a clean selection, right? So that's a little trick that I have for blending yourself into your background a bit better. All right, and that's the guide. That's how we took real images like the ones here and generated AI versions like this final product, right? If you have any questions or want me to cover anything else, for sure reach out. Happy to help more. Also, keep a lookout on a guide. I'm taking this further and generating video versions of this AI avatar that I created. All right, thanks.